What Elon Musk's son just said about Jesus will leave you speechless. It started like any other quiet morning in Los Angeles. The studio lights were warming up, the makeup team doing final touches, and Elon Musk had just arrived at the set of a popular morning talk show with his 5-year-old son, X. The plan was simple: a 10-minute, lighthearted segment about fatherhood, routines, and maybe a few laughs. Nothing more. But what happened next would reach millions and echo far beyond the studio. As they sat down, X swung his legs gently under the blue couch, his shoes barely touching the floor. He looked around the studio, not with nerves, but with a kind of calm curiosity. His small fingers traced invisible shapes on his pants while the host, Sarah Jennings, leaned in with her signature smile. "Are you ready to be on TV?" she asked him kindly. X nodded once, then softly. "I've been ready since I woke up." Elon smiled, his hand resting gently on his son's back. No one knew it yet, but those words would be the least surprising thing the boy would say that morning. The show began like thousands of others. Right jingle, studio applause, a smooth introduction. Today we have someone very special with us. Visionary Elon Musk and his son X. Cameras cut to the father and son. Elon adjusted his mic, blinked at the light, still silent. Sarah opened with a safe question. "Elon, what's something surprising about being a dad to a child like X?" As Elon answered, X's gaze wandered toward the ceiling lights. Then suddenly, without being prompted, he leaned toward his dad and whispered, but loud enough for the mic to catch it. "Can I talk about Jesus?" Sarah blinked. Elon paused mid-sentence. The studio fell into a hush. "Of course," Sarah said after a beat. "What would you like to say?" X turned toward the camera. He didn't fidget. He didn't smile. He spoke like a child who had been holding a question in his chest for too long. "People talk about Jesus a lot," he said, "but they don't really listen to him." Silence. Even in the control room, the buzz died down. Sarah's fingers tightened around her cue cards. Elon looked at his son, surprised but not alarmed. "What do you mean, X?" Sarah asked gently. The boy's answer, that would ignite a wildfire on social media, stir religious leaders, spark classroom debates, and break millions of hearts wide open. Before we continue, we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring stories. Sarah leaned forward slightly, her voice softer now, careful. "What do you mean people don't really listen to him?" X looked down for a second, then back up. His voice was calm, but every word felt like a tiny stone dropped into still water. "Jesus said to love people. Hi, even people who are mean. But grown-ups don't do that. They just yell and fight." No one moved. The cameraman's hands hovered still over his controls. The producer in the booth stopped giving instructions. Even Elon seemed unsure of what to do. This wasn't a rehearsed moment. It was something raw, unfiltered, and real. Sarah swallowed. "That's a very big thought for someone so little. How did you learn about Jesus?" X shrugged. "Books and asking Daddy." Elon cleared his throat gently. "We read a lot together. He asked questions I didn't expect at his age." But X wasn't done. "Jesus said to forgive people," he added, turning his little body toward the host. "That's hard. I tried. But sometimes I still feel mad inside." Sarah nodded slowly. "That's okay. Forgiveness is hard for adults too." X looked at her seriously. "Then why did Jesus say to do it if it's so hard?" The question hit the room like thunder wave sound. No one had an answer that didn't feel too heavy for the moment. And yet here was a 5-year-old asking it, not with anger, but with genuine confusion. Behind the scenes, phones started buzzing. Clips were already being clipped, shared, sent. The social media intern for the show texted the producer. "It's blowing up on Twitter. The Jesus clip just hit 500K views in 10 minutes. Sarah glanced at her earpiece. She was being told to keep going. "Don't interrupt the boy, let it unfold." "Have you ever had to forgive someone?" she asked softly. X nodded. "A boy at school took my dinosaur toy. I cried a little, then I gave it to him. I thought maybe Jesus would have done that." Elon turned to his son, his voice barely above a whisper. "That was kind of you." "I just wanted the right stuff," X whispered back. The room was now dead silent. Everyone, crew, staff, Elon himself, was watching this small boy speak with a kind of innocent wisdom no one could look away from. "Do you think Jesus is real?" Sarah asked carefully. X nodded again. "Yes, because sometimes when I'm scared, I say his name and I don't feel scared after." Goosebumps. Even from the back of the room, someone quietly wiped a tear. Sarah's voice shook slightly. "Do you want to tell people watching something about him?" X looked into the camera, tilted his head, and said, "Jesus said to be like kids because kids don't know how to hate yet." And just like that, millions of hearts cracked open at once. The control room was in chaos, but quiet chaos. Producers typed furiously, editors marked clips, the head of programming texted in all caps, Don't you dare cute to commercial. But back on set, things were still. Sarah took a breath. X, is there something Jesus said that you think grown-ups forget the most? X nodded slowly. He said to help poor people. The simplicity of the answer was almost too much. Sarah hesitated, unsure how deep to go. But the boy didn't wait. There's a man by our house. He sleeps on the sidewalk. One time I gave him my sandwich. You did? Sarah asked gently. Yeah. I asked Daddy if we could give him a blanket too, and he did. But then he was still there the next day, so I got mad. Elon looked down at his hands, visibly emotional. Sarah leaned in. Why were you mad? Because I thought if you do something nice, the sad stuff should go away. He paused, but it didn't. Sarah swallowed hard. And what did you do then? I asked Jesus why he doesn't fix everything. And then I cried a little. Elon reached out and held his son's hand. And then, X continued, looking straight ahead. I thought maybe Jesus wants us to fix some things. The moment hung like a painting frozen in midair. Everyone watching on screen and in real life felt it. That soft punch to the chest, that quiet question that doesn't go away. Maybe we're supposed to be part of his fixing, X said almost to himself. The comment exploded across the internet. Hashtag Fix with Jesus began trending globally. Pastors began referencing the moment in real time. Celebrities tweeted it with broken heart emojis. One megachurch posted, a 5-year-old just reminded us all of the gospel. Back on set, Sarah's voice broke slightly. X, do you think God listens when you talk? X looked at her, then glanced toward the ceiling, thinking, yes, I think he listens even when people whisper. A beat of silence. But sometimes, he added, grown-ups are so loud they can't hear him back. The control room couldn't keep up. Thousands of comments poured in every minute. People were crying in their kitchens, classrooms, cars. A moment of TV had become a mirror to the world. Elon rubbed his eyes and sat straighter. He's always been a thoughtful kid, he said quietly. X turned to him, eyes wide. Daddy, do you think Jesus likes rich people? Elon froze. Sarah froze. Everyone froze. It was the question. But one that hit too close. One no one ever asked out loud. I mean, X continued, he said it's really hard for rich people to go to heaven. Elon blinked. Yes, he did say that. But you're rich, so are we in trouble? The entire studio held its breath. Elon looked at his son, then at Sarah, then at the blinking red camera light. No, he said gently. Not if we remember that money is something we use, not something we love more than people. X nodded slowly. Then we should give more. Jesus would want that. Sarah could barely hold herself together. And somewhere, across millions of screens, a ripple of conviction passed through homes and hearts, quietly changing people, one viewer at a time. Elon sat still, but his mind was moving 100 miles an hour. The cameras were rolling, but he wasn't thinking about optics, headlines, or PR. He was thinking about his son, the tiny boy beside him, saying things that hit harder than any boardroom pitch or shareholder report ever had. Sarah noticed his silence and filled the space. X, did you talk to Jesus? X nodded. Sometimes. Like when I wake up and when it's dark. What do you say to him? I say hi. Thank you for today. Please help me not be scared. And please help people who don't have sandwiches. Soft laughter broke the tension. But it wasn't mocking. It was gentle, tender, human. And do you think he answers? Sarah asked. Not with words, X said. But sometimes my chest feels warm. Like when Daddy hugs me. Elon looked down, his lips pressing tight to keep emotion back. That's beautiful, X. Sarah glanced her earpiece. The team backstage was scrambling, fielding interview requests, tracking shares, notifying Elon's team that every major outlet wanted the full clip. But none of that mattered now because X wasn't done. I think grown-ups forget how to feel stuff, he said. Sarah blinked. What do you mean? X folded his hands in his lap. Like when you're little, you feel things fast, like happy and sad and mad. But big people try not to feel. They just talk a lot. Elon exhaled, long and heavy. I think he's right, he whispered. Sarah turned to Elon. You're one of the most recognized men in the world. But right now, you're just a dad. What is this moment teaching you? Elon paused. The lights felt warmer. The world felt smaller. I think I spend so much time trying to build things, he said slowly, but maybe the most important thing I'm helping build is already sitting right next to me. Eggs leaned against his dad, small fingers holding Elon's sleeve. Sarah smiled. That's the quote of the year. But X lifted his head. I have another one. Oh, Sarah laughed. Let's hear it. X looked straight into the camera. Being smart is good, but being kind is better. Another wave of silence. And then applause. Not the studio's usual clapping. This was slower, heavier. The kind that came from hearts cracked wide open. Backstage, a crew member whispered, I just called my mom. I don't even know why. In homes around the country, people were crying and didn't know how to explain it. They just felt it. Sarah turned to the boy. X, if Jesus was here right now, what would you want to ask him? X blinked, thought for a second, then said, "Can you help the grown-ups remember how to love?" Tears fell down Sarah's face. She didn't try to stop them. Elon kissed the top of his son's head and closed his eyes. In that moment, nothing else mattered. Just a father, his boy, and a quiet truth the world wasn't ready for but needed to hear anyway. The studio had never felt so quiet. No background chatter. No clicking keyboards. Even the bars of the lights seemed to soften, as if the whole space was holding its breath. Sarah leaned back, eyes still wet, voice barely above a whisper. "That's a beautiful question." Elon didn't speak. He simply watched his son, like he was seeing him for the first time. Not as a child with curious questions, but as someone carrying a kind of quiet light. Then from the back of the studio, a crew member stepped forward, gently, slowly. She placed something small on the edge of the set and backed away. It was a simple wooden cross. No one had planned it. No one had rehearsed it. It was just something she kept in her backpack. She had seen it in her hand and felt she had to place it there. X noticed it immediately. He climbed off the couch, quietly, carefully, and walked over to the cross. He crouched down, small hands wrapping around the base. Everyone watched. No one moved. He lifted the cross and turned back to the camera. His voice was soft but clear. "I think this is heavy not just because it's wood," he said, "but because it means something." He walked back to his dad and handed it to him. "Here, Daddy, you can hold it now." Elon stared at the cross in his hands. His fingers trembled slightly as he looked at his son. "Why are you giving this to me, buddy?" X shrugged. "Because you fix stuff. But this might fix you." A sentence hit like lightning. Sarah gasped softly. The camera operator wiped his face. Someone backstage whispered, "That's it. That's the moment." Elon closed his eyes, holding the small wooden cross like it was the most valuable thing he'd ever touched. "Thank you," he whispered. And then X climbed back on the couch, legs swinging like before as if nothing had changed, but everything had. On social media, clips of the moment were exploding. #FixYou trended globally. Religious leaders, celebrities, even political figures began weighing in, not with opinions, but with awe. Something had shifted. Sarah took a deep breath, knowing the show was almost over. "X, there are millions of people watching right now. Is there anything else you want to tell them?" The boy looked into the camera, serious again. "Jesus doesn't want us to be perfect, just honest. Pause and soft, like soft hearts." He placed a hand over his chest, like this. The final moment before fade-out was simple. Elon holding the cross, Sarah holding back tears, and a boy, just 5 years old, reminding a divided world that maybe the way back wasn't through being right, but through being soft again. The segment ended, but no one left their seats. The studio didn't move. The cameras stopped recording, but the atmosphere stayed sacred, like church after the last hymn, when no one wants to break the silence. Elon gently placed the cross on the table in front of him. He leaned in toward X and whispered something no one else could hear. The boy smiled, small and shy, and leaned his head on his dad's shoulder. Sarah finally stood up, holding her cue cards tightly like they were the only solid thing in the room. "Then I'm not scared to go there someday." And just like that, the boy drifted off to sleep, peaceful, whole, and unaware that millions were still replaying his words, crying in silence, and feeling a strange kind of hope they hadn't felt in years. Not because of theology, not because of doctrine, but because of one child with soft eyes and an open heart who simply said what the rest of us had forgotten, that maybe it's not about being right. Maybe it's about being kind. What about you? When was the last time you let your heart be soft? When was the last time you listened like a child without needing to win, fix, or explain? If this story made you feel something, don't let that moment pass. Hold it. And if you want to hear more stories like this and stay close, subscribe. Turn on the bell. Be part of something softer. If this story meant something to you, don't just leave. Join us. Subscribe now. "We've had many guests over the years," she said softly, "but I think today will stay with us forever." Backstage, phones were buzzing nonstop. The network CEO called twice. CNN, Fox, and even international stations had picked up the segment. Churches began requesting permission to share the full clip during weekend services. But none of that had reached X. He was busy showing his dad how to make a heart shake with his fingers. "I do this when I'm happy," he said. Elon mimicked the gesture slowly, his movements unsure at first, then steady. "Like this?" "Yeah," X giggled. "That means you're soft now." Elon laughed, eyes glassy. "Maybe I am." Meanwhile, Sarah's producer approached quietly. "We need a follow-up. This has become more than a segment. It's a movement." Sarah nodded, but asked to stay pure. This wasn't just good TV. This was truth. Back on the couch, X had one more thing to say. He turned to his dad again. Can we give away some of our stuff? Elon raised an eyebrow. What stuff? Like toys, and clothes, and money. Elon smiled. We already do, remember? But more, X said. For people who feel cold at night. A pause. Elon glanced at Sarah, then back to his son. Okay, let's do more. Hex beamed. Jesus would like that. Sarah cleared her throat. X, would you come back on the show sometime? He tilted his head. Can I bring my Bible? Of course, she laughed. Bring anything you want. From the back, a tech assistant whispered, I haven't prayed in years, but I just did. Another said, I texted my dad. We haven't spoken in 6 months. The boy didn't hear any of that. He was busy tracing stars in the air with his finger, the way kids do when they're happy and dreaming. The studio lights dimmed. The room slowly emptied. But something sacred had been left behind, not just on tape, not just in trending hashtags, but in people. A ripple that would keep moving quietly from heart to heart. And in the middle of it all was a little boy who wasn't trying to teach anything. He was just saying what he felt. And somehow, that was enough to shake the world. Later that afternoon, the world was no longer the same. The sun hadn't even set yet, but the story had already traveled across continents. What began as a morning talk show had become something more, a quiet revival that didn't start in a church, but on a blue couch with a child holding a cross. Clips of X's words flooded every platform. Jesus doesn't want us to be perfect, just honest. Maybe we're supposed to help him fix things. If you're soft, you can love better. They weren't just quotes anymore. They were being printed on t-shirts, shared in school assemblies, whispered in hospital rooms, posted by celebrities, soldiers, teachers, and teens. At a church in Dallas, the pastor played the full interview on a projector. His sermon that day was only 3 words long. Be like X in a hospital waiting room in Atlanta. A mother held her child tighter. Watching the clip again, tears running silently down her face. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to. Across the country, an atheist father texted his estranged daughter. I saw the boy. I think I finally understand what you meant. None of this was planned. None of it was forced. It just happened, because sometimes the world doesn't need another expert. Sometimes all it takes is a child asking a question that no adult dares to say out loud. Elon and X returned home that evening. The house was quiet. Dinner was warm. But something had shifted between them. Elon sat on the edge of his son's bed, holding the small wooden cross X had been given. You know, he said, you helped a lot of people today. X smiled sleepily. Did Jesus see it? Elon nodded. I think he did. X turned onto his side, hugging his stuffed animal. I'm glad. I didn't want to make a big thing. I just want to tell the truth. You did, Elon said softly. And you reminded your dad what really matters. As Elon stood to turn off the light, X called out one more time. Daddy, yes? Do you think Jesus has toys in heaven? Elon smiled in the dark. I think he has everything that makes kids smile. Okay, whispered. Then I'm not scared to go there someday. And just like that, the boy drifted off to sleep, peaceful, whole, and unaware that millions were still replaying his words, crying in silence, and feeling a strange kind of hope they hadn't felt in years. Not because of theology, not because of doctrine, but because of one child with soft eyes and an open heart who simply said what the rest of us have forgotten, that maybe it's not about being right. Maybe it's about being kind. What about you? When was the last time you let your heart be soft? When was the last time you listened like a child, without needing to win, fix, or explain? If this story made you feel something, don't let that moment pass. Hold it. And if you want to hear more stories like this and stay close, subscribe, turn on the bell, be part of something softer. If this story meant something to you, don't just leave. Join us. Subscribe now.